Hello and welcome to an irregular Dish Shelved with Adam White. Uh, this time I've got some more sword and sorcery for you. I've been on a real kick of that lately, and I keep finding more. And last time I talked about mostly magazines. This time I'm going to talk about a few anthologies that I came across that were really good. The first one is Swordplay, uh, edited by Dan Brereton, Allison Pang, and James A. Moore. And Dan Brereton is an artist who does an excellent cover there, and has done a lot of comic books and stuff like that. And he's got a story in here that's really good, uh, and he's got illustrations throughout that are just awesome. Uh, really excellent story. It's available in hardcover, softcover, and as an ebook. Uh, I almost got the ebook, but then I was reading some interviews about the book, and I saw that you could get it at. Let me see here. Bud's Art Books. Um, and it's a site online where you can order books, Bud's Art Books, and you could get the hardcover for essentially cover price, and it came sketched and signed by Dan Brereton, and that I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So it even has some color in the sketch, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. So if you get this, they've got a limited number of copies of it, but I would look into Bud's art books for this Swordplay by Dan Brereton, because you can get an awesome sketched copy and autographed for just the cover price of the book. Uh, it has a load of good stories in it. Um, Barbarian Gothic was a particularly good one, by Charles Rutledge. Uh, there was a real interesting one by Colin Bunn, who is a comic writer that I really like. And it was a sword and sorcery in a very untraditional way. And it was took place in kind of like an almost an apocalyptic future. And I thought it was a really interesting take on sword and sorcery, uh, to still qualify as that kind of story, but to deal with the kind of content that it did. I thought it was a really interesting story. The Conquerors by Christopher Golden was an excellent story. Um, City of the Dead, Mortality by Tanya Laird was a really good one. Vision of a Crimson Eye by Michael Burke. I mean, it's just, the whole book was just excellent. Lots of sword and sorcery stories. Beautiful cover. Like I said, this one had the sketch in it. Really excellent. And I can't recommend this highly enough. Again, there's a good view of the cover. And, and again, it's got illustrations at every chapter, sometimes two, with for every story by Dan Brereton. It just, I mean, it's just awesome artwork, just outstanding. So this, highly recommend this book. Very excellent. The next one I read on my Kindle, Sigyn of Asgard by B. Harlan Crawford. That's a name that you want to get familiar with, because I really enjoy his work. He was in a couple of the magazines that I talked about last time, and he's got this character Sigyn of Asgard, and he has two uh, books of short stories featuring the character. Really good, really fun stories. It's about this young girl who's a warrior that is supposed to get married to a man who's been chosen for her, and she decides that she wants to go off and see the world before she does that, and she keeps getting caught up in adventures on her way back to home to get married, and the adventures are just excellent. And there was even a story in one of the books I read this time, one of the anthologies, and I started reading it by B. Harlan Crawford and didn't even realize it was a Sigyn story until I got into it a little bit. And it was a really excellent story too. But the two Sigyn books, you can get them real cheap on Kindle. I'd highly recommend those. Uh, Again, B. Harlan Crawford, and I'm picking up anything that I can with his name on it because he's a really excellent author. So I read that one next. Then I read A Book of Blades, and it is a anthology. Um, you know, I'll see if I can show you the code. No, not showing up. But it's called A Book of Blades, and it's selected, the stories are selected by the Rogues in the House podcast members. Uh, there's a Anywhere you get podcasts, you can get it. Rogues in the House, really excellent podcast about sword and sorcery. I've listened to a few of them. They're really good. I'm planning on listening to more. They've been doing it for several years now, and they put together this anthology, and it was excellent. I mean, just a really excellent anthology. Uh, by the Sword by John C. Hawking. That's another name that you want to get to know. He does really excellent sword and sorcery stories, John C. Hawking does. And By the Sword in this one was really good. They have one by Howard Andrew Jones, who always is excellent. You know you're going to get something good from him. Uh, I mean, there's just so many. The Curse of Wine by J.M. Clark. Um, he has, well, it's not giving me my other pages here. Oh well. But he's got, I think it's Kiyembe, uh, is his character, and he had a story in the New Edge Sword and Sorcery that I talked about last time, and he popped up in a couple of the anthologies I read this time. And his Kiyembe, I believe, stories are really, really excellent. Really good character, uh, just fantastic stories, great sword and sorcery. Uh, John R. Foltz, The Blood of Old Shard was a good one. Uh, the City of Screaming Pillars by Cora Buellert. That was a really interesting story. Uh, just really atmospheric, and you weren't sure what was going on through the thing, but then as you discover what's happened, it's just really entertaining story. And like I said, there's just so many good ones. S.E. Lindbergh, Matthew John, Scott Oden is another really good one. He's got one called Crawl. Really excellent Book of Blades. Uh, excellent anthology. There's a second anthology, Book of Blades, a Book of Blades Volume 2. I have downloaded it. I'm going to read it too. It's next on my list probably, but I thought I'd just talk about one for this one. But it's really, the first one was just really good, and I can't highly recommend it enough. And um, I don't know what happened to my iPad that it's not giving me my other pages now. But there we go. But I really enjoyed Book of Blades. Highly recommend it. Rogues in the House podcast. Check it out. The next one I read was called Brutal Blades, and I read it on my Kindle. There was uh, The Ghouls of Venus. I don't have them. It doesn't tell me in the contents on my Kindle who wrote which one, so I'm kind of going by uh, two different screens here. But Jason Ray Carney, who is a really good author. I really enjoyed his stories in here. Um, I think he did Ink of the Slime Lord. It's the first one listed here, but I could be wrong. But um, really, he's a really excellent author. He also is co-editor for a. Uh, let me grab it. Sorry. It's the Dark Man Journal of Robert E. Howard and Pulp Studies. He's one of the co-editors of this, which is a really excellent thing that's related to Sword and Sorcery because they talk a lot about Conan and all of Robert E. Howard's work. And this issue, which is 13.2, it's the newest. Jason Ray Carney, like I said, is one of the co-editors of it, but it has the 2022 Glenn Lord Symposium presentations in it, which are Local Caller Barbarians, Bran Mak Morn's Downfall, and Conan the Existentialist Hero. They were papers that were presented at Robert E. Howard Days that year, and they include them in their entirety in here, along with a few other a few other articles too. Really interesting, really interesting journal. I'd highly recommend it. You can get the last probably 12 or so on Amazon. They're not very expensive, but Jason Ray Carney, who has a couple of stories in these, that is an editor of this, and he's also a really excellent author. And Mark William Chase wrote a really excellent one. There was a B. Harlan Crawford in this Brutal Blades. It just really, there was one called The Hissing of Summer Rogues that was a really fun story that had a little twist to it that you didn't see coming. And it was a really excellent. The Ghost Man of Mars was fun. There was also one called The Saga of the Fearless Vikings, Their Voyage to Darker Shores, and Their Bloody Fight Against the Conquering Ghost. uh, really long title, but it was a really fun story, and it kind of makes you think about who are the good guys and who are the bad guys here. Um, some kind of bug on me. It's just one thing after another. Anyhow, um, it was a really fun story, and it really made you think about who's the good guys and who's the bad guys, and it kind of switched in the story as it went along, and it was a really good story. But I really enjoyed it. Uh, I really enjoyed all the stories that I read in here. There was one that I didn't particularly care for. I'm not going to say which one it was, but it was a long story, but I really just didn't get it. Uh, and so one story out of 4 volumes of anthologies and short stories, uh, that's not a bad ratio. Lots of good stories. Like I said, Brutal Blades was good. Um, the um, Book of Blades you just can't ask for any better than that. And again, Swordplay, which I'd highly recommend getting that sketch copy from Bud's Art Books. Get them before they're gone. They're not a sponsor or anything. I just was really impressed with that, and you're only paying cover price for the book and getting all that. But really excellent stories in this one too. Lots of fun. Um, just I can't recommend these books enough. And again, I know it was a lot of sword and sorcery, just like last time, but that's what I've been reading recently. I promise next time I'll try to do something different. But really great stories. I highly recommend all of them. And if you're into sword and sorcery, there's a lot of stuff out right now that's really good. And you really ought to be checking this stuff out. So, anyway, that's all I'll say this time. I hope to have some more videos up in the future. Like I said, I don't have any kind of regular schedule now, but I've kind of got the bug to have some videos. So it'll just be on whatever I'm reading at the time. So thanks for hanging out with me this time. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy Sword and Sorcery. Check out these books and the magazines that I talked about last time if you haven't seen that video. Really great stuff. Uh, Especially, I want to say um, B. Harlan Crawford, J.M. Clark, Jason Ray Carney. Just these are but a few of the really excellent authors, and of course, uh, oh, can't remember now. Um, John C. Hawking and Howard Andrew Jones. Uh, Especially them, you want to check their stuff out. I know I've missed a lot of them. There's a lot of good authors in here in these stories uh, that have done really good stories. So check them out. Again, thanks for hanging out with me this time, and I hope to see you again sooner than later.